Do know he won't go quietly. The former president coming out swinging in New Hampshire, framing a routine request from prosecutors as a fight over free speech. What it tells us about the challenge ahead for the judge, the attorneys, and the legal system itself. Plus, paradise going up in flames as wildfires ravage the lush landscapes of Hawaii. Authorities telling stories of tourists having to jump into the water to escape the smoke and fire. So what's causing it, and how bad could things get? And an unelected Democratic state prosecutor and an elected state Democratic prosecutor in Florida calls Ron DeSantis a weak dictator after he suspends her. The dereliction of duty, the governor says the state attorney committed, and where this whole fight goes from here. But we start with a pointedly defiant Donald Trump, very publicly challenging the judge and the system that could send him to prison for the rest of his life, even with a critical decision in his D.C. case.
You know, Donald Trump is in a position right now that he's going to win. And if he don't win by becoming reelected again, he's still going to win. Because you think about it, what was his primary concept towards running for office? It was to drain the swamp. So it don't matter at this particular point in time whether or not he's a martyr by somebody either attempting to assassinate him or assassinating him. It's not going to matter whether or not he gets reelected. It's not going to matter in some of these other issues. And to be quite honest with you, it would actually be to the system's it would be to the to the system itself. It would be contrary to them if they was to take Donald Trump and lock him up, because Donald Trump has already made his mark, and in making his mark, it does not matter at this particular juncture in what either the system does or what either Donald Trump does, because Donald Trump's primary goal for running for president was to drain the swamp, because he knew that there was so many illegitimate people in the system that the system basically was broken. Which goes back to basically what happened to me up here in 2005, why passing out Bible literature, why a group of people in Martin, Tennessee decided that they was going to charge me for falsifying files, which is once more stepping on my First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, and wanting to shut me up by charging me with a charge that had terrorist implications to it, pertaining to somebody that either pulled down a fire alarm or somebody screaming fire, fire, fire in the middle of a theater, in which I didn't do neither, and was not even in a theater or was not even around a fire alarm whenever I was passing out Bible literature to a teller up here in Martin, Tennessee in 2005, whenever they decided that they was going to drive from Weakley County all the way to Carroll County to arrest me for falsifying files, which according to the statute, to the Tennessee statute, indicates that it has terrorist implications of creating a panic, and there shouldn't be a panic created. You know, for the past 30 plus years, I've been trying to alert the people, and it hasn't been in just within the past 2 to 3 years, not 2 to 5, 2 to 3 years, since COVID has hit, that people are just now starting to awaken towards just exactly how bad that the climate, global, disastrous problems are occurring all over the planet. And they still haven't put it on full steam yet, because if they had, they would not be trying to go back to their regular quo lifestyles. But you're going to see here in a few minutes towards what's going on in other parts of the world that's going to be that much more alarming pertaining to global warming. And if it means me getting charged with falsifying files towards me trying to alert the world in these occurrences, as well as alert the world pertaining to biblical Bible prophecy, if it means me getting charged for falsifying files, well then I'll take 1,000 of them. I'll take as many as they got. That's just like my brother and I being concerned about 3 little children across the road over here, and called up the abuse center in Nashville and called up the abuse center in Weakley County, and within a matter of, I guess, probably 90 days later, my brother had died because of all the intensity and the pressure that was on him, because of how the community rose up against him, rose up against us, and basically I had to agree to take on stalking charges because I was concerned about 3 little children across the road pertaining to their environment that they was living in. Now, if that ain't backwards, if that ain't upside down, I will kiss your rear end and give you 30 minutes to draw up a crowd. Please listen to some more of this, please.
It's potentially just days away. Now, Trump was never one, as a businessman or politician, to heed outside advice. But even with the stakes so high, he's insisting he will fight any charges against him in front of the media and crowds of supporters however he wants to, even if the court orders him not to.
Crooked Joe now wants the thug prosecutor, this deranged guy, to file a court order taking away my First Amendment rights so that I can't speak. So listen to this. We don't want you to speak about the case. When we say I can't talk, I will talk about it. I will. They're not taking away my First Amendment rights.
I tell you what it leads into. It leads into Gestapo type tyranny. The same type of Gestapo tyranny that was being used on a physical level during World War II pertaining to the Germans executing the Jews. And I'm pretty sure that probably started out in a verbal form that eventually went from a verbal form to a physical form. And that's the part that I'm scared of right now, is that how far is this unjust justice that they're calling justice going to go? I mean, whenever you get to looking at vigilante justice, whenever you're making up your own rules as you're going, it's basically the same thing that the Gestapo's done. The Gestapos made up their own rules, and they started out verbally, and then they went from verbally to physical. So I'm just wondering how far is too far that the system is going to play off on, because I know for a fact that it violated my Constitution. Not only then, but my Constitution was violated in 1989 whenever Homeland Security got involved towards wanting to apprehend something from the ministry that didn't belong to the ministry, pertaining to a theatrical teaching device that at the time Homeland Security didn't have no business in taking or interfering with, because the separation between church and state. So that in and of itself was a very, very malice move upon to the United States government, in addition to what they done to me in Wheeling, West Virginia, towards saying that I had threatened one of their prior presidents towards being an assassin, going to take out one of their presidents. So I could go down a list about how my violations, my particular constitutional amendment violations, has been violated again and again and again ever since I've stood up for the ministry in 1988. Not counting what happened to me in 1983, just the mere fact of me talking about the Antichrist and the one world government, the 2 witnesses, the opening of the 7 seals, the 4 horsemen, etc., etc. Not counting what happened to me in 1983 right here in Northwest Tennessee, in Obion County, in a little town called Kenton, Tennessee. So let's go forward here, because this is kind of all over the board here pertaining to what's going on with Donald Trump. what they're basically doing right now, they're doing a pile-on. They're doing the exact same thing to him from a legal perspective as they've done to me on a physical perspective whenever I first come back here to Northwest Tennessee in 2014. From 2014 to 2017, 3 years, it was a pile-on to the extent of dereliction of duty being handled by the Weakley County courts of not being able to stop the torment that was happening in our lives right here in our home, right here in our home area, the area that we was raised up in all our lives.
Very much. And still to come, 15. That's how many billion-dollar weather disasters federal experts say have hit the U.S. just this year so far. That's a record pace. Plus the strain on the nation's already stretched medical system from extreme weather. We're back in just 60 seconds. New images, smoke blanketing the skies of usually idyllic Maui, where wildfires are being fueled by pounding winds. Multiple structures have been destroyed, forcing evacuations and causing power outages in several communities. The National Weather Service says Hurricane Dora passed south of the island chain and is partly to blame for those wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. You can see them here blowing debris around. Those treacherous winds complicating relief efforts and even downing helicopters as firefighters try to minimize the flame. And coming up in our next hour, I'll speak with a real estate expert who has been navigating and avoiding the flames on one of the Hawaiian islands. He'll explain what it's like on the ground right now. So that's coming up. Now, this is just one of many extreme weather battles playing out here in the U.S. Millions of people under severe weather alerts today. The South with blazing heat from Texas to Florida. And it's where we could see 50 new record highs set by the end of Saturday. Austin already baking in an historic 32-day streak of 100-degree plus. And in Miami, for the first time, well, they hit a heat index of 109 or higher for 3 straight days now. It is so hot that a hospital there has paused elective surgeries after an AC unit broke. One registered nurse tells the Miami Herald, quote, "It's so hot you have to move patients or they risk dying." And this is what's left of one man's Delaware home after 2 massive trees toppled over, smashing into the roof earlier this week. His message? You can't fight Mother Nature.
Was so quick, so high-pitched maybe sounding, so different that it was just hairs on the back of the neck and let's run to the basement. Things come on quick, and that was absolutely, we had seconds to react.
I want to bring in NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Also with us is Stuart Stephen, chief strategist for Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign and senior advisor to the Lincoln Project. Good to have both of you here. All right, Michelle, I keep asking this question, and I'm sorry about that, but when can we expect Americans to start to get a bit of relief here?
I know, Chris. I wish I could give a better answer, but we are going to see this weather pattern continuing. We are stuck in this stagnant high-pressure situation. It's also linked to climate change. Things are slowing down. The oceans are warming. It's slowing down the jet stream. The jet stream is a really fast wind of air, so we're seeing that kind of being pushed to the top. We're seeing this high pressure anchored in place. It's not budging. Think of it like a heat pump, just pumping in this hot air, and that's why we're seeing it week after week, now month after month, and we're looking records breaking pretty much daily, monthly, and all-time records. So no relief as this high pressure remains in place. We don't see it moving over the next several weeks. We're probably going to see this through the month of August as well. So still today, 52 million Americans under heat alerts, stretching from the southwest, the south central states into the southeast. Here are so many stories of just dangerous situations with households, no air conditioning, even just stoplights melting in this heat. We're looking at excessive heat warnings, Austin down to Corpus Christi, New Orleans, Tallahassee, Tampa, so many spots under an excessive heat warning. And that's because we're going to see temperatures once again into the 90s, once again into the 100s. You factor in the humidity, some spots feel like 117. So that is just unbearable and downright dangerous. We're looking at records breaking once again today. Dallas 105. You have been socked in with that heat day after day. Houston 103, 97 in Tallahassee. The record there is 99. So we're going to get pretty close. If if not break it by the end of the day today. Then tomorrow we notice that these temperatures don't budge. We're staying right around the 106-degree mark in Abilene. Houston, your hot 104, couldn't higher break the record of 104 there. Corpus Christi into the triple digits. Same story to the southeast. The southeast, you've broken so many records, especially along the western coast of Florida. Orlando today, 98 degrees. Miami, 94. The record there is 96 degrees. Again, you factor in that humidity, it's going to feel very, very hot. And Chris, it's not just the southern states. By the weekend, we're looking at the mid-Atlantic really hot too, into the mid-90s in Richmond. Back to you.
Michelle, thank you for that. Okay, Stuart, let's talk politics of this, because you've got July, the world's hottest month in recorded history. And if we look at Arizona, just an example, the death toll there confirmed is around 150 people. Hundreds more deaths are under investigation. This is what Politico reports. Arizona Republicans come back to the state capitol earlier this month with, quote, a prayer to ease the scorching heat. I'm not going to question the power of prayer. I am going to ask you the question, is there something more that can get done here?
Yeah, of course there is. Look, this is sadly part of a larger pattern that the Republican Party has become the anti-science party and the anti-reality party, which is really to say it's not a governing party. I mean, government exists to solve problems. So you're talking about this heat wave down my native Mississippi and across the South. Well, I'm sitting in Vermont today, where they just had the third 100-year flood in 15 years that devastated the state. Billions of dollars of damages. So, of course, a responsible government will address this and treat it as a reality and not make it a political issue. This is sort of a replay of what happened with the vaccine.
Well, you mentioned the damage, billions and billions of dollars. There's also a massive just disaster relief price tag. NOAA says 15 separate billion-dollar disasters to date this year. So, yeah, it's a humanitarian issue, but it's also clearly a fiscal issue. If not the argument that people are dying is going to work, could an economic argument move the needle, Stuart?
Well, you know, ultimately, one of the power centers in the Republican Party is the business community and is corporate donors. And this affects them tremendously. And I'm sort of baffled why there's not more pressure from them on power figures in the Republican Party to take this up seriously and address it. It is an economic issue. It is something that is going to continue to make businesses have to raise prices, to make it more difficult for businesses, to have to cover expenses and costs for their own employees. And it's something that this is what we pay people in Washington and in state legislatures to deal with. And yet there is a reluctance on the Republican Party to admit that there is a problem. It's really just sort of astounding.
Stuart Stevens, I have a feeling this will not be the last time we have a conversation about this, unfortunately, but thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. And overseas, by the way, flooding, unlike anything Norway has seen in decades. Torrential downpours there are leading to massive evacuations as rivers swell to their highest levels in at least 50 years, according to Reuters. Homes and businesses have been submerged by major landslides as a result of the storm. Or shocking images like this, a mobile home just being swept away by raging floodwaters. There it goes, just floating under a bridge, completely smashing into it. The Associated Press reports that authorities there are now considering blowing up a part of a dam at risk of bursting to prevent downstream communities from getting completely swamped. In fact, a police spokeswoman tells Norwegian broadcaster NRK, when there is so much water, the worst case scenario is a kind of tidal wave coming down the river. And in eastern France, rescue crews say at least 9 people died after a fire ripped through a vacation home for adults with disabilities. Firefighters are still searching for 2 others who are feared dead. 17 people were evacuated, including 1 hospitalized with serious injuries. In a statement, French President Emmanuel Macron described the home as ravaged. He said his thoughts are with the victims, the injured, and their families, and he thanked first responders. Coming up, to impeach or not to impeach, the battle between right-wing hardliners and vulnerable centrist Republicans, with Speaker McCarthy in the middle. the new and controversial demands the speaker is making. You're watching Chris Jansen Reports only on...
Let's go forward. Keep going forward. It's all politics. Hang on a minute. Looked like it was going to shift to something else here. Hang on 1 second. By the way, my cousin come by a while ago, Jim Boy. The one that has been so belligerent about this piece of property out here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, told me that he had done something up at the monument place in Greenfield towards ordering himself a headstone to go down by Alamo Baptist Church, and that he also paid him some money to go in and redo something at the footing of our grandmother and grandfather's headstone, that they hadn't gotten to it yet, so he had to go up there and rattle their cage, I guess. But anyways, he was just as belligerent as he always have been towards not wanting to be cooperative and wanting to hear nothing that I had to say, and for me to have to listen to everything that he had to say. So I just wanted to throw that in there while we was going through all these different fast forward motions going to what I was wanting to go to, because a lot of times it becomes very, very confusing in somebody's digital data if they put too much on there.
Mexico, and all civilian space crew will blast off tomorrow on the first private Virgin Galactic mission. NBC's Gotti Schwartz has the details.
This is the next frontier of space travel. Here at Virgin Galactic Spaceport, deep in the New Mexico desert, 3 regular folks are training for the ride of their lives.
Kind of feel like I was born in this life for this.
On Thursday, they'll blast to the edge of space on board the Unity.
I was once a child with a dream, looking up to the stars. Now I'm an adult in a spaceship.
The same ship that rocketed Virgin Galactic founder Sir Richard Branson and his crew to space in 2021, 53 miles above the Earth, at speeds of more than 2,300 miles an hour.
All right.
But this next space trip will be Virgin Galactic's first with civilian passenger astronauts only. People like Keisha Shahoff and her 18-year-old daughter, Anna. Natives of Antigua, they'll be the first mother and daughter duo in history to go.
You know, I personally have gone almost 700 miles an hour, compliments of Homeland Security, whenever they decided to take me from Wheeling, West Virginia to Raleigh, North Carolina in 1990 or 1991. Speed is really something that has already been accomplished, and to me, this is just my opinion now, just to deliberately want to go up into space and float around for a few minutes and then come back down is an absolute waste. It's a waste of fuel, it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of everything. It would be different if you was going up there to do something, to make medicine or create something or do something that hopefully was going to be for the benefit of the planet or the world. But that's not the case on this. This is some sort of a rich man's dream that, as far as I'm concerned, is not doing nothing but eating up more resources pertaining to our oil and gas and our petroleum oil that we're constantly draining out of the ground, that is causing Mother Nature to react and respond the way that Mother Nature is responding.
And the first astronauts ever from the Caribbean. For these astronomy buffs, it's been a dream since childhood.
I'm hoping to give myself that confidence to try new things.
What are you looking forward to the most?
Just looking back and seeing our beautiful planet, and then looking across to see my daughter's face.
The third passenger, 80-year-old John Goodwin, a former Olympian from England and a lifelong adventurer who's also battling Parkinson's disease.
Just shows you this attitude of space for all is a wonderful attitude.
These passengers undergo 3 days of rigorous training to prepare for the 90-minute flight, including 3 minutes of total weightlessness.
You want to go and fly it?
I would love to fly it. To find out what to expect, I took a spin in their cockpit simulator with Chief Pilot Dave McKay.
I'm going to...
Don't get me wrong, I'm all about aviation and about our space technology, NASA, etc. Especially whenever it comes to making medicine and doing things that needs to be done that we can't do down here on the planet. I'm all for that, but just to go up there and to waste a bunch of fuel and to drive around to be weightless for 3 to 5 minutes, I'm not for that. Besides that, if you put the risk involved towards all of that, that's kind of like the risk involved towards a wealthy person, a rich person.
Say about his case.
Going down into the ocean, the floor's ocean, to want to witness the Titanic about 1.5 miles below the ocean. And basically, once they got about halfway down there, or maybe they got all the way down there, I don't know. But anyways, there was obviously a problem that wound up causing the death and the injury of all them people that was being too careless with their lives. And it's exactly what it is. It's being too careless with their lives. It's one thing if you're going down into the oceans to do something, or if you're going up into the space to do something, but just to be doing it, I think it ought to be outlawed. I think it ought to be outlawed, and I think it ought to be mandated between the United Nations that wasted time and energy and resources is against the global society.
Dangerous wildfires raging across Hawaii right now. The Coast Guard says it's already rescued multiple people who jumped into the ocean as an escape from those wild flames. Our NBC News reporters are following all of the latest developments, but I want to start right there. Talking about Maui, dealing with those terrifying wildfires. Maura Barrett is following this story for us. What more can you tell us, Maura?
Well, Chris, it's really a dire situation. Just about 8 a.m. right now in Hawaii, so we're finally starting to get some updates from officials. But unfortunately, because we're seeing thousands of people without power, downed power lines on the roads, downed trees, there's a lot of issues with communication. So in terms of firm details about how many injured there might be or any other communications about rescue efforts and firefighting efforts is a little limited right now. And that's in due to big part. There is a massive Category 4 hurricane hundreds of miles south of the island chain, but the winds that are whipping from that hurricane are what are fanning those flames so severely right now, and why we're seeing this wildfire spread mainly on both in Maui and an area of concern on the Big Island.
Basically going through the same type of scenario that happened in Boulder, Colorado about 3 years ago. I think it was about 3 years ago, may have been 2. Where it was just jumping from building to building to building. The winds was blowing about 70 miles an hour because there was a storm approaching the area that in total burnt about 1,000 plus structures. And if it wasn't for the blizzard itself that come down in the form of snowfall, the first responders and the firemen still to this day don't know for sure if they could have ever gotten it out. Whenever the elements get just right in how everything can come together just like the perfect storm, the next thing you know, it becomes an event similar towards what happened in Chicago that they claimed 150 some odd years ago, whenever the cow kicked over the lantern and the lantern caught one particular home on fire, and that home burned another home, the 2 homes turned into 4, 4 turned into 8, 8 turned into 16, etc., etc., etc. That burned the whole town of Chicago up. The planet has become so stagnated in how many people's on the planet, in the way that we have built these structures, that I'm really surprised that we haven't seen more and more catastrophic apocalyptic events like this occurring. Regardless whether it was occurring in Boulder, Colorado, or all the droughts that hit out towards Oregon and California, etc. I was just reading a thing yesterday pertaining to Lake Mead. Did go up a little bit. I think it went up about 16 foot, but right now it's still something like 150 foot below where it ought to be. The second largest lake in California that filled almost up to its capacity, okay, right now is losing over a foot a day in its water table level. That scientists and meteorologists and professional people are just bewildered about how come that it is exacerbating the way that it is. And God led me to believe, whenever I was listening to the program or watching the program yesterday on Facebook pertaining to the excessive, they call it a yo-yo weather event out in California, where they went for like several years for major droughts, and then they had a major waterfall pertaining to rainfall this winter and all the snowfall, and now the same lakes and rivers that was filling up are now drastically going down in areas like they've never seen before. And God led me to believe that maybe possibly some of that water could actually be going into craters below the ground, towards either cooling off some of the stuff that needs to be cooled off, or filling up some of the aqueducts that they have drained in the past years and years and years. I don't know. But the bottom line is this: our planet right now is wreaking havoc, just as the Bible predicted that was going to occur. That these events that we're now witnessing towards the last days events, that every time these events occur, it basically drains the resources in that particular area, because every one of those structures, of those homes that gets built, is going to have to be rebuilt with something. And odds are they're going to have to cut down more trees to rebuild them. You know, the 1,000 structures that burnt over in Boulder, Colorado 2 or 3 years ago, from a construction standpoint, I guess it was a good thing, because it gave everybody a lot more work. But on another level, look at how many more trees had to be sacrificed to build the same buildings pertaining to the people that was already living in those buildings. Look at all the other deposits and minerals and all the other materials that had to be sacrificed just so those same 1,000 structures could be rebuilt for people to live in that was living in them before. So every time an event like this happens, it strains the resources. And if it doesn't strain the resources right then and there directly, it will strain the resources long term towards everything being rebuilt, regardless whether it gets destroyed by a fire, it gets destroyed by a flood, or it gets destroyed by whatever. Every time these events occur, it's going to put that much more strain on the resources. As the resources are having more strain on them, then you fall into the category of supply and demand. Whenever you have more of a demand and you have a supply, then the prices outlandishly go up tremendously. That's what we're seeing right now all over not just America, but all over the world, and not just food prices, but also in wood, all kinds of building construction materials. These things are going up, and the reason why they're going up is because of global warming, environmental catastrophes, apocalyptic events that are happening, just like what's happening right now over on one of the islands in Hawaii.
As well, active evacuations ordered by officials. And this is something that's very atypical to see in Hawaii. It is coming up on their fire season, but something this massive, officials say, is absolutely unprecedented. Because of those winds from the hurricane, firefighting helicopters are grounded. They're unable to fly, which means they're unable to drop water in an effort to contain those flames, as well as get a full scope of what the fires actually look like. You mentioned...
Now, we've seen this again and again and again worldwide. Either on a burning level or a transformation flooding level, as far as a deluge. So what's happening here? You may be asking. These are all got to do with the prophecies of the sinfulness of mankind. And if you'll study Revelations very carefully, it talks about the woes And even though it don't talk directly about 3 woes, you know good and well before the second woe there had to be a first woe. And you know good and well that after the third woe there has to be more woes, because you got to pursue in following the rest of the different degrees or categories, or compartmentalizing how the judgment of God is even going to become more and more severe as the first seal leading to the second seal, the third seal, the fourth seal, all the way down to the seventh seal, and then it goes from the seals being opened to the trumpets being blowed, and these are all different degrees of sorrows that it's talking about pertaining to the inhabitants here upon to the earth. These are the very things that I've been trying to warn people and tell people about for the past 30 plus years, that people like Jim Boy, my cousin that recently come by here, driving his nice truck, living his life, making good money up in northern Chicago, being a mail operator, was on his way to Florida to see a girlfriend down there, and I told him that's a lot of money and a lot of time to be used just over a girlfriend. Well, it's my money, it's my time. I go, I know that, but he was bragging and beating his chest about how well things is going for him. And he has no earthly ideal, and 99.9% of the people don't, in understanding that life is so sensitive. We are only here for a short period of time, and everything could be going hunky-dory today, and tomorrow, teetotal hell busts loose in your life because of some reason or another. And if it's not something major like this right here, it could be something as small as a microscopic germ, to the point that you wind up finding out that you got cancer. Now you're going to have to go through chemotherapy, not knowing if you're going to live or die. Don't nobody have any concern about other people's feelings or other people's losses until they themselves are experiencing their own. And of course, usually whenever that occurs, they start screaming, woe be unto me, and they feel like that everybody and their brother is supposed to bow down to them and support them in the problems that they're going through, in which God bless the Christian society that does that, because if we didn't do that, could you only imagine how harsh that things would be right now in certain people's lives. But as he was driving by, I explained to him about that I was almost through painting the railroad ties, cinder ties out here, and that I was fixing to finish up or start back on the actual initial Purple Heart Memorial, that I had added something to the cornerstone memorial in the corner, and he was so rude about it that he just rolled his window up and didn't want to hear nothing else that I had to say. Once more, he was concerned about his own death. He was concerned enough about his grandmother and his grandfather's death that happened. I guess grandmother had now been dead 35, 40 years, and grandfather had been dead 50 years, because their headstone has given in to the foundation, sinking in one place or the other. He's concerned about that. He's concerned about his own headstone. He's concerned about going to Florida seeing a girlfriend. But he isn't concerned about other people's lives. That is how blinded, and that is how far society has gone out into the left side towards where we are right now in seeing what we're seeing. And it's got to be one of the most saddest, horrifying, worldly events that are happening right now, going on worldwide, that I personally can ever begin to imagine towards happening. And I know that during World War I, during the Spanish flu, during the 1929 collapse of the Depression that started here in America, I know that all that was bad. All that was really, really bad. It really was. And they claim that the pandemic actually circled the planet 3 different times during that time. Well, they're claiming that the pandemic right now pertaining to COVID ain't over with yet here in America. That it's still out there. And it's still affecting people's lives. And it's still bringing death toll to people's lives. So, It's one calamity catastrophe after another. One calamity catastrophe after another. One calamity catastrophe after another. And the point of origin goes back originally to where whenever I said of what happened, it shouldn't have never happened in 1988 pertaining to the White House, that has put us where we are today, not just as a community, not just as a state, not just as a nation, but as a planet. And until people are willing to wake up to that and understand that, and then are willing to do something about that, then we're going to steadily see things constantly dwindling and getting worse and worse and worse. Pakistan last year affected over 12 million people. I don't know how many it killed pertaining to flooding. All kinds of other big flooding areas flooded in the past 3 to 5 years. It just caused humongous damage as far as property and debt toll. The heat, the fires, the hurricanes. Now we're seeing diseases coming out of the melting of ice, either on the South Pole or the North Pole. We're discovering things that we've never discovered before because of the melting of the ice. And it talks about this in the Bible, that there will be things that will be released into the world that will basically be the wrath of God coming down upon humanity, toward trying to turn humanity back over to God. And if people can't understand tough love techniques, well then obviously there's some line that they can't see the trees for the forest to begin with.
Those 12 people rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard, it paints a picture of how severe this damage really could be once we get a better look on the ground. People literally escaping into the ocean.
But they had, I don't know, it was a remarkable amount of people that died last year over in the UK and Europe. They had all kinds of fires last year. They've had fires up in the northern regions this year pertaining to raging fires, pertaining to the heat. I mean, I could just go on and on and on pertaining to the climate deniers, pertaining to the oil, OPEC, petroleum industries that has put us where we are right now. And that's the reason why that I continually to say that, as far as I'm concerned, the vast majority of them need to go to jail. And the main leader pertaining to OPEC, they need to go to hell. Not jail, but hell.
Into the ocean to get away from those smoke and flames. And right now officials are warning that they will have that red flag evacuation order, those emergency orders, in effect through at least early morning hours tomorrow. Chris.
Well, what a terrifying situation. Maura Barrett, thank you. And by the way, we've got much more on that catastrophic scene in Maui, because we'll be speaking with someone who's been driving through the island. That's ahead. Now to NBC's Garrett Hake, who is following Donald Trump's trial and is
Go on. Back up.
Oh.
Back up. Right back there.
We have more on that breaking news out of Hawaii, where ravaging wildfires are engulfing Maui right now. Clint Hansen of Maui Real Estate Radio recorded this drone footage of a terrifying scene as it developed through the night and into the early morning hours of this morning. Clint Hansen joins me now. He's been driving around trying to help people and bring them supplies. First of all, good for you, but what are you seeing? How bad is it?
This is the worst I've ever seen any fire on the island. It does happen from time to time where we can get some inclement weather. Maui's known for good weather. It's been 180 years since we've been hit by a hurricane, but when summertime comes and things dry out and we have high winds, a perfect storm happens, and that's definitely what's been happening in the last 24 hours. I was in Lahaina early and late afternoon. I got out late afternoon, barely, by taking dirt roads and getting back home to Kihei, only to see the fire start and read the person-by-person accounts of houses being destroyed, landmarks being burnt to the ground, buildings that are hundreds of years old, or over 100 years old, gone. It's really kind of shocking to think about the places where you grew up to just no longer exist, to be fearful about your friends and be fearful of your friends, whether or not they're still alive because you can't communicate with them. I watching footage of people burned alive in the streets and people panicking for their lives as they drive through flash points where if they were to step out of the car, there's very little chance of them surviving. It's terrifying. I've been taking footage in the part of the island where I live in Kihei. There's actually been 3 major fires on the island, and up country where my parents' family home is, there's fires all around it on Olinda. And then in Kihei, I was taking footage and giving nightly updates. Had about 5 updates through the night so people knew what was happening with the fire. Fortunately, Kihei appears to be spared at this time, but that's what they thought about Lahaina yesterday. They thought they had the fire under control, but with these winds, it whipped up real fast. People didn't have time, and we don't have the numbers, but I think complete families are gone now. People are running to the ocean to escape, jumping into it, getting rescued by the Coast Guard. They've mobilized all civilian boat owners to go out there last night, not anymore, to try to rescue people. I'm trying to get out there to check on friends, family, pets of friends, but there's no way. The road is just completely clogged, and I don't blame them in the least because it would just be pandemonium in an already chaotic situation. I'm right now at the Matalaya Harbor trying to find a way to get out there on a boat, but it appears that everything's pretty much locked down here as well.
So, Clint, when is the last time you were able to talk to your friends who are in Lahaina? And is everyone in your family okay?
My direct family's okay. My parents are just in the mainland briefly. My wife and kids are in Kihei, away from the worst of the danger. And like I mentioned, the fire has changed direction in Kihei and doesn't appear to be going to be a problem. But obviously, with those multiple hotspots for the most recent video, if they start up again, it could be just as bad as Lahaina.
And when did you speak to your friends last who were in Lahaina, and what did they have to tell you?
Most of the people I talked to work and have been servicing Lahaina, firefighters, boats going out there, and some of the other people's footage shows the harbor completely devastated. I mean, it's gone. I don't know how a boat can burn when it's sitting on the water, but that just shows the severity of how fast and hot it came. The harbor is gone. It's not there. Every boat was burning. I have no idea how bad it could be where the boats even burn. So I'm trying to get out there and discover, but with the poor reception and all the towers being burnt down, there's very little communications getting out. I've had friends, they jumped on their mopeds to go out there to try to get to their family, that they fear the worst. I mean, when you see, some auntie on the ground, probably dead, and you can't get in contact with your family, you just think the worst. And
unbelievable how horrifying that all that must be. And because it brought this up here on the bottom heading out there about power outages, whenever I made a warning, an advisory up here in Kentucky in 2007 pertaining to major electrical disturbances to come. I wanted people to verify, to understand that I was not just talking about electrical occurrences right here in the immediate area or within the state or within several states or within America. I was talking about worldwide major electrical disturbances to come. And it doesn't matter if it's a major cold front that comes down that basically barreled into Texas, that caused I don't know how many deaths, that caused their power units to basically lock up and go down. The same thing happened last year here in the state of Tennessee that TVA had to apologize to people for. There's been other major events that's happened out west pertaining to power outages. electrical disturbances, and this is only part of that in which what that I had already done predicted that was going to occur, along with a bloody road ahead that was misunderstood, misinterpreted, and was taken out of context. And now I hope that whoever gets a hold of this video will understand that my intent was not to want to create electrical disturbances, but rather than to warn people about them. It's the same thing if the weather is becoming intimate in the area and the weatherman comes on the TV or whatever and tells you to seek shelter. We don't get mad at the weatherman. We don't blame the messenger, because the messenger's trying to do the proper thing by warning us ahead of time that, hey, there's inclement weather coming. Seek shelter. But that's exactly what they've done to me. Just like what they didn't do to me whenever I moved back here and David and I, my brother, was being attacked again and again and again. The courts did not make sure that they was doing their jobs professionally and adequately towards making sure that they kept the wolves at bay, the hounds at bay. They was letting them come right into our atmosphere, right into our lives, right where we was living. And as far as I'm concerned, they should be charged for dereliction of duty, and they should go home with their you-know-what wagon. Because all this is now beginning to start materializing towards just exactly what the motives was in behind the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions that's been on now this quest now for 30 some odd years. But nobody wanted to support him. Nobody wanted to believe in him. Nobody wanted to help embrace him or even mentor him. And because of it, now we're where we are today. And to think that the people in this area had the vendacity that they wanted to blame me for their own inadequacies. They wanted to blame me for my own brother's death. They wanted to blame me because peace had not been established, shows you the type of ignorance of some of the people in this area that I was dealing with. Unbelievable in where we are today. And I realized whenever I was talking to Brother Cagle the other day in the Pentecostal church in Union City, Tennessee, I'm not wanting to pick him out or point him out, but the bottom line is that it wasn't just the United Pentecostal churches that denied by calling me a liar and didn't want to accept what I was telling them and teaching in this area about, but it was all the churches. It was the Baptist, the Presbyterian, the Methodist, the Church of Christ, the Jehovah's Witness. It was all of them that snarled up their nose and wanted to give me the cold shoulder. Well, it's one thing to give somebody the cold shoulder, and it's another thing to either attack them or allow for them to be attacked. And that's what I run into whenever I come back here into this area in 2014. From 2014 to 2017, that basically caused the death and the injury of my brother David, has now put us on this trajectory that we can see unfolding on a day-to-day, everyday level in some form or fashion all over the planet. I never would have thought that I would have witnessed nothing like this. But it's happening right in front of our very eyes. But yet now you still got people out there that's climate deniers. Just like you still got people in this area that's Juby deniers. Oh, they claim that they're Jesus supporters. But when you get to talking about the in-depth teachings of Jesus, like I was involved in, oh, no, we don't believe none of that. We're already going to be gone whenever all that happens. Oh, really? Well, you're still here. You're still here. You hadn't disappeared like you was wanting to. You hadn't vanished off the planet like you was wanting to. You're still here. So blinded of the blind leading the blind that has led us down this endless path of where we are right now that, to be quite honest with you, we shouldn't have to be going through all this. The world should not be having to go through all this. But it's the repercussions of the resistance movement that began after 9 tapes circulated to the White House in March of 1988 that basically they thought, like the Egyptians, that they was going to be able to overpower God and overpower God's people. Well, they created a narrative, all right, and the narrative now is out of control. And if it's not out of control in one form, it's out of control in another form. Sad.
And
sad.
we're doing what we can to survive and find out what is going on with our loved ones, but we're not getting a lot of information out right now.
How are you doing, Clint?
I'm lucky. I am very fortunate. I don't really know how Maui's going to survive this. We already have a crisis in housing, and with so much housing being gone and being the most desirable place on the planet to live, it's not looking like it's going to be a good situation. We've already, the governor has claimed it being a state of emergency for housing alone, nothing to do with the fire. And now we have a large swath of homes. We are at a shortfall of 10,000 homes on the island, and this is before the fire. And there's only 140,000 residents that live here. So I have no idea how we're going to face the future, but our politicians need to get together and come up with rapid options for housing.
And what we're having is a calamity between the richest of the rich that can afford all this stuff, and then you got the working class that's barely struggling, hanging on, and then you got the poorest of the poor that are sifting through the cracks towards losing their homes, losing their livelihoods, losing their cars, losing their lives, losing their families. You know, we got something like 30 or 50,000 people just in LA County alone that's living in cardboard boxes, basically a tent city. You got one calamity on top of another calamity that is overshadowing the other calamities. And whenever you have this going on, my friends, if you can't understand that we are under siege right now, just as the Bible talks about, towards Satan coming down in great wrath because he knoweth his time is short. If you can't see that and understand that, something like 15,000 immigrants, illegal immigrants, cross over the border every day to America. New York is screaming and hollering. Places in Phoenix, Arizona, screaming and hollering. Places in Texas is screaming and hollering. We can't take no more. We can't take no more. We can't take no more. But they're still steadily coming over here. If you can't understand that the world right now is under a crisis, a dire crisis, then something is wrong with your comprehension. Either you're incapable of comprehending all these things that are going on all over the world, or you just don't care to comprehend them. It was Al Gore, long about 2000, that put out the word, very strong. And instead of Al Gore being rewarded for his endeavors, he was actually punished. And the way that he was punished is the people in the state of Tennessee sworn that he was crazy, that he was an environmental lover, that he was an owl lover and a tree hugger, and that they didn't elect him for president. In other words, they was willing to sacrifice their own political objectives just to prove their point that climate was of our own imaginations, was of our own ideals, and now, 20-something years later, look where it's got us. It's unfolding. And you wonder how come I'm so severe about whenever I say that the oil petroleum companies that has created this atmosphere for us, the reason why that I am so in depth towards wanting to punish these people for what that they have done to us all. You wonder how come that I am upset, angry, frustrated, pertaining to how that the Saudis has basically blackmailed or deceived the whole world into what we're dealing with right now. I guarantee you, whoever listens to this digital audio that I'm putting out, if you've recently just got through losing a loved one because of COVID, if you're having to put up with the strenuous conditions pertaining to the illegal immigrants crossing over the border, if you have recently just got through having to file bankruptcy because of the job situation that is lost its footing here in America to the point that we basically got sold out, and that's whenever all these retail stores started buying all these cheaper goods from all these other countries. If you hadn't been affected by that, if you hadn't been affected by the fires, if you hadn't been affected by the floods, if you hadn't been affected by all these other horrors that's falling all over the world, it's going to be just like the Walmart slogan that I continue to keep telling people: give it enough time and it will be coming to a neighborhood near you. And I don't say that boastering. I say that in grievances, in understanding that all of this could have been prevented if our politicians over here in America would have done the right thing beginning 30 plus years ago, that has now put us on this trajectory of seeing doom and gloom. I mean, yesterday or day before yesterday, I put out a video, put out a digital audio video pertaining to what was going on in Alaska, pertaining to the glaciers that's melting so bad that it created such turbulence in the waters that it was depleting the ground on both sides of the river, to the point that major homes was falling off into the river. One problem right after another. And it's happening right in front of our very eyes. But yet, no, you still got people that scratching their head. I don't know if I want to believe that or not. I don't think we got nothing to do with this. I think it's the wrath of God coming down. No, it's the wrath of Satan coming down, because we was blinded by Satan and we have created this atmosphere for ourselves, and now we're seeing the complications and the consequences on account of it.
There needs to be a solution, because we're about to lose a large portion of our population. Hopefully it's not to death, but they may have to move out or face living out of their cars, because there's not going to be a lot of other options.
Clint Hansen, I know that there are things.
In other words, these people may have to migrate to another island, or basically just live on the land, kind of like the Zulus over there in Africa that's become headhunters again. Cannibalism. Bad. You can't get no bad. No badder than bad than what you're seeing right here. It's bad.
You need to do now, and I just want to say that we're all thinking about you and everyone on the island, and especially to your family and friends. I hope you're able to be in touch with them, and if you have an opportunity, we'd love to speak with you again and get an update. But we wish you luck, which seems like very little under these circumstances, but we do thank you so much for coming on the program. Clint Hansen, thank you.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha. We do expect an update from state officials at 10 a.m. local time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and of course we will keep you posted all day long right here on MSNBC. We'll be right back. These circumstances, but we do thank you so much.
Unbelievable. Australia, about 3 years ago, went through one of the worst events on record. UK, England, your areas across the pond, they went through horrible events last year. They're still going through some of them horrible events this year. The world is warming up, not because of the atmosphere above our head. The earth is warming up because of what we have done to it down here on the earth toward draining all the oil, the petroleum oil, that is causing areas of this heat expanding from the core of the earth now to the outer areas of the earth. That's, kind of like a bubble in the center that now finally makes it to the top. but this bubble is nothing but a heat bubble, and as it penetrates the outside area, we call it a heat dome, but it's actually manufactured from the earth, from the bottom of the earth. Scientists has been looking in the wrong direction. They've been thinking that the atmosphere above our head is what is creating the heat problem down here on the earth, and it's just the other way around. It's what's going on the earth that's creating the heat problem above our heads. There's no doubt carbon dioxide and gases and all the pollutions in the air has a big factor to do with it towards tearing down the ozone. But I've said this before, if our planet was being warmed up the way that it's being warmed up right now, simply because of the sun, you and me and nobody else would be able to go outside without getting second, third, and fourth degree burns. In other words, the planet would become inhabitable because of what the sun was doing to it. We know that the planet is not becoming inhabitable. There is a few places that becomes inhabitable, like Death Valley out in California or out in Yuma, New Mexico. There are a few places, in the Middle East and Arab countries that basically are inhabitable areas, places in Africa that are inhabitable areas because of the heat. But it's not all of that sort. It's the fact that we have drained so much oil out of the ground that now we have disturbed the ecosystem below the ground of why that oil was ever put there to begin with. I personally believe that the oil was also put there, if you know anything about some of my teachings, that it was not only put there for a friction remover, that it was not only put there for a shield to keep the heat from expanding out to the outer layers of the earth, but I think that it was also put there as a kind of like a glue that helps keep everything stuck together. And here we are draining the glue, which we're wondering how come Africa, the whole continent over there, is separating itself towards basically creating two continents into one. Well, do you maybe think that it could have something to do with the way that we're draining the oil constantly out of the earth? See, whenever oil comes out of the ground, it's ooky. It's almost like molasses. It's very thick in content. And it was put there to help hold things together. Kind of like glue. It's really sad that we've reached this level of society to the point that we're witnessing what we're witnessing right now, again and again and again, right in front of our very eyes. It's only escalating and getting worse rather than it getting better. It's getting worse. It's really sad. And to think that I've just recently had a granddaughter that has come into the world in exchange towards a new baby coming into the world, just adds that much more sorrow and misery to all this is happening on the planet. I'm just about through painting what I need to paint on my creosote post. I may like just a little bit more touching up here and there, but I'm soon fixing to start back on the Purple Heart on the rocks towards planting the stuff that I need to plant and doing what I need to do there. I'm so brokenhearted by everything that's going on in one form or the other. Sometimes it's depressing to be able to come out here and struggle and fight and do things that you know that are the right things for those that are sacrificed so dearly because of. But you know that even though people have tried their best to knock all the wind out of your sail, you still have to do the proper and right thing, even if you only have 1 ounce of energy left in your body to do the right thing. You still have to do the proper and right thing for those that has made the ultimate sacrifices for us. Because if we're not going to honor those who have come before us, who's going to honor us once we get in our dilemmas? Good luck to all of us. Good luck and shalom.